Grecia, 86 before Christ. The dawn rises over Chaeronea, a plain about to be soaked in the blood of tens of thousands of men. The Roman legions are surrounded, trapped, condemned. Facing them 60,000 soldiers of Pontus wait for the order to massacre. The Romans are 15,000, 4 against 1. In military logic, this is not a battle. It is an execution. But leading the Romans is a man who does not know surrender, a man who has turned Roman politics into a bloodbath, and who now, thousands of kilometers from Rome, is about to show why the legions are the deadliest war machine ever created. His name is Lucius Cornelius Sulla. While the soldiers of Pontus prepare for an easy victory, Sulla observes the battlefield with cold, calculating eyes. He has spent weeks fortifying this position, digging trenches, erecting palisades, turning the ground into a deadly trap. His men are tired, hungry, far from home. But they are Romans, and Romans do not flee. The enemy general Archelaus commands a colossal army, heavy cavalry, endless infantry, and the weapon that should sweep away the legions like leaves in the wind. The scythed chariots, dozens of war chariots equipped with blades sharp as razors, designed to penetrate enemy formations and turn men into minced meat. Archelaus is certain of victory. Mithridates VI, the king of Pontus, who has already massacred 80,000 Romans in Asia, awaits news of the triumph. Sulla has a plan that will turn the enemy's numerical superiority into a nightmare. A plan that will show how iron discipline, military engineering, and tactical genius can annihilate any numerical advantage. In a few hours, this plain will become a slaughterhouse. 100,000 men will die, but they will not be Romans. How did Sulla turn an impossible battle into one of the most brutal massacres of ancient history? How did 15,000 legionaries destroy an army 4 times larger? The answer lies in the ruthless genius of a man who understood a fundamental truth. When logic says to retreat, the Romans advance. If you want to discover the brutal truth about this battle, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. What you are about to see will change your perception of ancient warfare forever. To understand what led 15,000 Romans to fight against 60,000 enemies in Greece, we must go back 2 years, 88 before Christ. Rome is the dominant power of the Mediterranean. But in the east, a formidable enemy has awakened. Mithridates Eupator, king of Pontus. Mithridates is no ordinary king. He is an ambitious, ruthless, intelligent ruler. He has built an empire that stretches from the Black Sea to Anatolia and hates Rome with every fiber of his being. In 88 before Christ, Mithridates makes a decision that will shake the Roman world. He invades the Roman province of Asia, but he does not limit himself to conquering territory. He orders something unimaginable: the massacre of all Roman and Italic citizens present in Asia Minor. In a single day, 80,000 men, women and children are slaughtered. The streets of the Greek cities fill with Roman blood. It is an act of total war, a brutal slap in the face of Roman power. Mithridates knows there is no turning back. Either Rome falls or he falls. Rome must respond. But there is a problem. Rome itself is in civil war. The Optimates and the Populares fight for control of the Republic. In this chaos emerges a man destined to change everything. Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Sulla is born into a decayed patrician family. His father has squandered the family fortune. He grows up poor, humiliated, hungry for power and recognition. But he possesses something that money cannot buy: an extraordinary military intelligence and a ruthlessness without limits. During the Jugurthine War, under the command of Marius, Sulla personally captures the Numidian king, Jugurtha, an achievement that launches him toward glory. Sulla is not only a soldier, he is a shrewd politician, a manipulator. When the Senate entrusts him with the command of the war against Mithridates, the leader of the Populares Gaius Marius, tries to steal the command from him. Sulla's response is unprecedented. He marches on Rome with his legions. It is the first time in Roman history that a general turns his weapons against his own city. Sulla enters Rome, massacres his opponents, and then leaves for the east. The man who now commands in Greece is not a traditional hero. He is a dictator in the making, a man who uses violence as a political tool. In 87 before Christ, Sulla lands in Greece with 5 legions. The situation is critical. Mithridates has conquered almost all of Greece. Athens, the symbol city of Hellenic culture, has allied with Pontus against Rome. For Sulla, this is an unforgivable betrayal. He besieges Athens for months. The city resists, but Sulla is implacable. When the walls finally fall, the Roman soldiers enter like a tide of iron and blood. The streets of Athens fill with corpses. Sulla orders the systematic looting of the city. Ancient temples are stripped. Treasures accumulated over centuries are loaded onto Roman ships. But conquering Athens is only the beginning. Mithridates has sent to Greece his best general, Archelaus, an experienced, capable commander who has already defeated other Roman armies. Archelaus commands enormous forces, tens of thousands of infantry, thousands of cavalry, and above all, the fearsome scythed chariots, weapons that have terrified the enemies of Pontus for generations. Sulla knows he is outnumbered. His legions are exhausted from the siege of Athens. Supplies are scarce. Rome is too far away and too busy with its own civil wars to send reinforcements. Sulla is alone. But he has something that Archelaus does not have: the absolute certainty that Roman discipline and his tactical genius can compensate for any numerical disadvantage. In 86 before Christ, the two armies moved toward the decisive clash. Archelaus chooses to march south, trying to draw Sulla into a pitched battle where numbers will make the difference. But Sulla does not fall into the trap. He chooses the battlefield himself, Chaeronea, a plain in Boeotia where 3 centuries earlier Philip II of Macedon annihilated the Greek city-states. Sulla knows history. He knows that whoever controls the terrain controls the battle. And he is about to show that in ancient warfare, genius is worth more than 10,000 swords. What drove a man like Sulla to risk everything in such a desperate battle? The answer is simple. For Sulla, retreat is not an option. Winning at Chaeronea means eternal glory. Losing means the end of everything. Spring of 86 before Christ, Sulla has conquered Athens. But the victory has a price. His legions are exhausted. Months of siege, brutal urban fighting, forced marches across Greece have reduced the ranks. Of the 5,000 men per legion he brought from Italy, many are dead, wounded, or sick. Sulla can count on about 15,000 effective legionaries. 15,000 men to face the entire Pontic army. The news arriving from the scouts is terrifying. Archelaus is gathering colossal forces from Macedonia, from Asia, from Thrace. Tens of thousands of soldiers converge on Greece. The Pontic general has learned from previous mistakes. He will no longer underestimate the Romans. This time, he brings an army that should sweep away any resistance. The reports of the Roman scouts describe the composition of the enemy forces: 60,000 infantry, 10,000 cavalry, and 90 scythed chariots. These chariots are the perfect psychological weapon. Each chariot is drawn by 4 horses. It is equipped with long curved blades mounted on the wheels and on the front. When they charge, they create a wall of death that advances at terrifying speed. Soldiers who are not cut to pieces by the blades are trampled by the horses. Against untrained infantry, the scythed chariots are devastating. But Sulla does not command ordinary infantry. He commands Roman legionaries, veterans who have fought in Numidia, in Gaul, in Italy, men who know discipline, who trust their centurions, who know that formation is everything. However, even the most experienced legionaries feel fear in front of 60,000 enemies. Sulla summons his officers. Among them are men who have followed him for years, centurion, hardened by dozens of battles, military tribunes who have seen the commander march on Rome itself. Sulla does not make inspiring speeches. He does not promise glory or booty. He simply tells the truth. If they lose this battle, they will all die. There is no retreat possible. There are no reinforcements coming. Either they win at Chaeronea, or their bones will bleach under the Greek sun. Sulla has a plan, and this plan begins with the choice of terrain. Chaeronea is located in a plain surrounded by hills. To the north flows the Cephisus River. Sulla studies the terrain for days, personally walks every meter of the plain, identifies the perfect position, an area where he can anchor his flanks to the hills, limiting the enemy's ability to use numerical superiority to encircle him. Then the real work begins. Sulla orders the construction of elaborate fortifications. The legionaries, already tired, must now turn into engineers. They dig deep trenches, 2 meters in front of the main position. The excavated earth is piled up to create embankments. Behind the embankments, they plant sharpened wooden palisades. But the real genius lies in what Sulla orders to build to stop the scythed chariots. In front of the main trenches, the Romans dig smaller ditches, massed with branches and earth. They plant sharpened stakes inclined outward, hidden in the tall grass. They create multiple obstacles specifically designed to break the charge of the chariots. A chariot that hits an obstacle at full speed does not simply stop. It destroys itself. The horses break their legs. The drivers are thrown off. The blades that should massacre the enemies become deadly traps for those who use them. Sulla does not limit himself to passive fortifications. He organizes his legions in a deep and compact formation. In the center, he positions the most experienced cohorts, the veterans who have fought with him in Africa and in Italy. On the flanks, lighter units, ready to move quickly if the enemy attempts an outflanking. Behind the main lines, he keeps in reserve 2 elite cohorts. These are his ace in the hole, the force he will launch at the critical moment to break the enemy. During the preparations, news arrives that Archelaus's army is approaching. The Roman scouts report that the enemy column stretches for kilometers. When they march, the earth trembles. The Roman soldiers on the hills can see the dust raised by 60,000 men on the move. Some legionaries, even among the veterans, begin to doubt. How can 15,000 men survive against that human tide? Sulla knows it, and he knows he must act before fear turns into panic. He summons the assembly of the legions. The 15,000 legionaries gather in front of their commander. Sulla climbs onto a platform where everyone can see him. He does not wear ceremonial armor. He wears the same segmented lorica as his soldiers. He speaks without rhetoric, reminds them who the Pacado Romans are. He reminds them of what they have already conquered. Numidia, Gaul, Italy, Athens. He reminds them that the enemies they are about to face have never fought Roman legions in open field. The scythed chariots are impressive, but useless against disciplined men and well-built fortifications. Then Sulla does something that cements the loyalty of his men. He announces that he himself will fight in the front line. He will not direct the battle from afar. He will be there with them. In the mud and blood, if they must die, they will die together. The legionaries respond with a shout that echoes through the hills. Fear does not disappear, but now it is controlled, channeled. They are ready. The night before the battle, Sulla walks among the fortifications. He personally checks every trench, every palisade, every hidden obstacle. He talks with the centurions. He makes sure that every man knows exactly what to do when the chariots charge. When the enemy infantry advances. At dawn, the Pontic army appears on the horizon. 60,000 men in battle formation. The standards of Mithridates flutter in the wind. The scythed chariots are deployed in front. 90 machines of death ready to destroy the Roman lines. Archelaus looks at the Roman fortifications and smiles. He thinks that Sulla is afraid, that he is hiding behind trenches because he knows he cannot win an open field. He does not understand that he is about to fall into the deadliest trap ever built by a Roman general. The battle is about to begin. The dawn of the day of battle reveals the full extent of Sulla's genius. What Archelaus sees from his lines looks like a standard Roman defensive position. Trenches, embankments, palisades. What he does not see is the masterpiece of military engineering that will turn his scythed chariots from supreme weapon into death sentence. Sulla has spent weeks studying the scythed chariots. He has interrogated prisoners, merchants, anyone who has seen these weapons in action. He has learned that their strength is also their weakness. They must charge in a straight line at maximum speed on flat terrain. Any obstacle that breaks the formation or slows the charge turns the chariots from predators into prey. The Roman fortifications are arranged on 3 defensive levels. The first level, the one Archelaus can see, consists of a series of shallow ditches spaced irregularly. They seem inadequate, almost symbolic. This is intentional. Sulla wants Archelaus to think he can overcome them easily. Behind these visible ditches, however, there are the real traps. The second level is hidden in the tall grass that covers the plain. The legionaries have dug holes half a meter deep, wide enough to trap a chariot wheel. These holes are arranged in irregular patterns, impossible to spot from a distance. They are covered with thin branches and earth. A man on foot can cross them without problems. A chariot traveling at charging speed shatters completely. The third level is the deadliest. In front of the main Roman line, hidden behind the embankments, the legionaries have planted thousands of sharpened stakes inclined outward at the perfect angle. Each stake is as tall as a man, fire-hardened, sharpened like a spear. They are planted so densely that a chariot cannot pass between them. They are positioned so low that they remain invisible until the last moment. When the horses see them, it will be too late to stop. But Sulla has not limited himself to preparing passive traps. He has organized his legions in a formation that maximizes tactical flexibility. In the center of the Roman deployment, there are 6 cohorts arranged in 3 lines: astati, principes, and triarii. The classic formation that has conquered the Mediterranean. Each cohort is composed of about 500 men organized in maniples that can move independently. The legionaries of the first line are armed with the gladius, the short Roman sword, and the pilum, the heavy javelin designed to penetrate enemy shields. Each man carries a scutum, the rectangular shield that, when the ranks close, creates an impenetrable wall. Behind the first line, the second is ready to fay, rotate forward. If the first gives way, behind still the triarii, the most experienced veterans, wait for the critical moment. On the flanks, Sulla has positioned the Roman cavalry and the Greek allies. They are not many, perhaps 2,000 cavalry in total. But Sulla does not need them to win a cavalry clash. He only needs them to protect the flanks long enough to allow the center to do its job. The key to Sulla's tactic is simple but brutal. Let the enemy chariots destroy themselves on the fortifications, then counterattack while the Pontic army is still in shock. It is a plan that requires nerves of steel. The legionaries must remain in formation while 90 chariots loaded with sharp blades charge toward them. They cannot break ranks. They cannot flee. They must have absolute faith in the fortifications and in their officers. Sulla walks along the Roman lines in the hours before the battle. He talks with the centurions, men he knows personally, veterans who have fought under his command in a dozen battles. The orders are clear. When the chariots charge, no one moves. The front lines kneel behind the shields forming the testudo. The legionaries in the rear throw their pila at the chariot drivers. Once the chariots are destroyed, they advance in compact formation. A centurion asks what to do if the chariots overcome the fortifications. Sulla replies coldly, "They will not." He has personally checked every obstacle he has tested with captured chariots. He knows exactly what will happen when Archelaus' scythed chariots hit his defenses. On the other side of the field, Archelaus is organizing his offensive. He has deployed the 90 scythed chariots on a wide front, ready to charge simultaneously. Behind the chariots, he has placed his heavy infantry in a massive phalanx. On the sides, the heavy cavalry of Pontus, armed with long lances and bronze armor. It is an impressive formation designed to overwhelm the enemy with pure brute force. Archelaus is confident. He has seen the Roman fortifications and considers them inadequate. He thinks that Sulla is desperate, that he is clinging to defensive measures because he knows he cannot win an open field. The Pontic general has fought against Greek Thracian, Macedonian armies. He has always won with numerical superiority and the power of the chariots. He sees no reason why today should be different. What Archelaus does not understand is that he is about to face something completely new. The Roman legions are not Greek phalanxes that break at the first impact. They are not tribal bands that flee before the chariots. They are the most disciplined and flexible military machine of the ancient world, and they are commanded by a man who has turned war into science. Sulla climbs onto a small hill behind the Roman lines. From here, he can see the entire battlefield. He sees the enemy chariots lining up. He sees the Pontic infantry preparing their enormous sarissas, the long Macedonian pikes. He sees the enemy cavalry moving on the flanks, ready to outflank the Roman position. He orders his cornicines, the horn players, to prepare. When the chariots charge, they will sound the signal for the testudo. When the chariots are destroyed, they will sound the advance. Everything depends on perfect timing. The sun is now high in the sky. The plain of Chaeronea is silent. 60,000 men on one side, 15,000 on the other look at each other. Across 300 meters of grassy terrain, in the Roman trenches, the legionaries grip their gladii, check the straps of their shields, whisper prayers to Mars, god of war. On the other side, the drivers of the scythed chariots check the reins. The horses paw nervously. The blades on the wheels shine in the morning sun. Archelaus raises his hand. The drums begin to beat. It is the signal. The 90 scythed chariots begin the charge. The ground trembles under the gallop of 360 horses. The rotating blades create a chilling metallic sound. Death advances toward the Roman lines at terrifying speed. Sulla watches the chariots advance and does not blink. He has spent weeks preparing this moment. Now, he will see if his tactical genius is enough to compensate for the 4-to-1 numerical inferiority. In the Roman trenches, the centurions shout, "Holfiam." The legionaries kneel, raise their shields, form the wall, wait for the impact. The trap is about to spring. The 90 scythed chariots cross the plain like a wave of steel and death. The noise is deafening. The hammering of hooves, the shouts of the drivers, the hiss of the blades cutting the air. 360 horses at gallop generate a vibration that the Roman legionaries feel through their feet, in their bones, in their chests. It is a psychological weapon as much as a physical. Many armies have collapsed even before the chariots arrive, simply from terror. But the Roman legionaries do not move. They remain kneeling behind their shields in testudo formation. The centurions walk behind the lines shouting orders, threatening anyone who dares to move. Sulla, from his elevated position, observes the charge with cold eyes. He mentally counts the seconds. 200 meters, 150, 100. The first chariots hit the hidden ditches. What happens next is a massacre, but not the one Archelaus expected. The front wheels of the chariots sink into the covered holes. At that speed, the impact is devastating. The chariots overturn violently. The drivers are thrown into the air like rag dolls. The horses with broken legs fall screaming. The blades mounted on the wheels designed to massacre the enemies slice their own horses and drivers, but not all chariots hit the holes. Some, by pure luck, find a path through the first level of obstacles. They continue the charge, 70 meters, 50. The Roman legionaries can now clearly see the running horses, the foam at the mouth. The crazy eyes of terror can see the blades shining in the sun 30 meters. The surviving chariots hit the second level of defenses. The sharpened stakes hidden behind the embankments, the stakes planted at the perfect angle pierce the chests of the horses with the force of their own momentum. The animals impale themselves, collapse, create a barrier of agonizing flesh. The chariots behind cannot stop in time. They crash into those in front. The blades that were supposed to cut the Romans embed themselves in the bodies of their own companions. In less than 30 seconds, the charge of the scythed chariots is over. Of the 90 chariots that Archelaus launched against the Roman lines, not even 10 reached the actual trenches, and these 10 crashed against the embankments. Unable to overcome the earth and wood obstacles, the surviving drivers jump down from the destroyed chariots, try to flee on foot. The Roman legionaries emerge from the trenches and massacre them with mechanical efficiency. The field in front of the Roman lines is now a chaos of dying horses, destroyed chariots, screaming men. Sulla's trap has worked perfectly. The weapon that was supposed to break the legions has self-destructed. Sulla does not lose a second. He shouts the order to the cornicines. The horns sound, the advance. The gates in the fortifications open. The Roman legions emerge in compact formation, shields raised. Gladiadron. They do not run. They advance at a steady pace. Inexorable like a tide of iron, Archelaus, from the other side of the field, watches in horror the destruction of his chariots. His best weapon has been neutralized in less than a minute, but he cannot afford to hesitate. He still has 60,000 men, 4 against 1. The numbers must still prevail. He shouts the order to the heavy infantry to advance. The Pontic phalanx moves, thousands of men armed with long sarissas, Macedonian pikes of 6 meters. Advance in tight formation. It is a formation that conquered half the world under Alexander the Great. The theory is simple. The pikes keep the enemy at distance, while the mass of the phalanx crushes any resistance. But the Macedonian phalanx has a fatal weakness. It is rigid, inflexible. It works on perfectly flat terrain. The field of Chaeronea, after the destruction of the chariots, is no longer flat. It is covered with corpses, destroyed chariots, obstacles. The phalanx must slow down. It must break formation to bypass the obstacles. The Roman legions do not have this problem. The maniples are designed to move independently. When they encounter an obstacle, they flow around it like water. The formation remains cohesive. The legionaries advance inexorably. The two armies clash with an impact that echoes through the plain. The sound is that of thousands of shields colliding, metal against metal. Men shouting. The first Pontic line tries to use the sarissas to keep the Romans at distance. But the legionaries have specific training against phalanxes. They use their shields to deflect the pikes, then throw their pila at the enemy lines. The Roman pila are devastating weapons. The weight of the iron penetrates the enemy shields, making them unusable. The Pontic soldiers must discard the weighted shields, leaving themselves exposed. The legionaries immediately exploit the opening. They advance with gladii raised and begin the brutal work of hand-to-hand combat. The Roman gladius is designed for this type of close combat, a short blade, sharpened on both sides, perfect for thrusting between the ribs or into the belly. The legionaries are trained to strike with mechanical efficiency, a quick blow to the abdomen, withdraw, the enemy falls. Advance. There are no wasted movements. There is no individual heroism. It is industrial slaughter. The Pontic phalanx begins to crumble. The soldiers of the first line fall under the Roman gladii. Those behind try to maintain formation, but it is impossible. The destroyed chariots, the corpses, the irregular terrain have broken the cohesion of the phalanx. What was a compact wall becomes a disorganized, mass of men fighting individually, Sulla, observing from his command point, sees the critical moment. The Pontic center is wavering, but not yet broken. He must strike now with decisive force. He shouts the order. The two elite cohorts he has kept in reserve set in motion. 1,000 fresh men, Sulla's best veterans, charge into the weakest point of the enemy line. The impact is devastating. The Pontic soldiers, already under pressure, cannot resist the force of 1,000 fresh warriors hurling themselves against them. The line breaks. The breach widens. The Pontic soldiers in the second and third ranks see their companions in front fleeing. Panic is contagious. Archelaus sees his center collapsing and makes a desperate decision. He launches the heavy cavalry against the Roman flank. Thousands of Pontic cavalry charge, trying to outflank the legions and hit them from behind. If they succeed, they can still turn the battle. Sulla has foreseen this too. The Roman cavalry on the flanks does not try to win a frontal clash against superior forces. Instead, it retreats in an orderly manner toward the hills, drawing the Pontic cavalry into rough terrain where numbers count less. Sulla's Greek allies, armed with javelins, emerge from positions on the hills and strike the Pontic cavalry from a safe distance. The Pontic cavalry finds itself trapped between the hills and the Roman cavalry that now counterattacks. Their attempt at outflanking turns into a massacre. The cavalrymen who try to flee find themselves blocked by their own companions. The Greek javelins pierce them. The Roman cavalry pursues them. In the center of the field, the collapse of the Pontic army is now total. The soldiers throw away their weapons and flee. The Roman legionaries pursue them, massacring them as they run. There is no mercy. Sulla has given clear orders: no prisoners until the enemy is completely destroyed. The Romans know that every enemy left alive is an enemy that could reorganize. The plain of Chaeronea becomes a slaughterhouse. Thousands of Pontic soldiers try to flee north, toward the Cephisus River. But the Roman legions are faster. The legionaries, trained to march 50 kilometers a day in full armor, have no difficulty catching disorganized soldiers fleeing in panic. At the river, the worst happens. Thousands of Pontic soldiers crowd on the bank trying to cross. The water is not deep, but the confusion is total. They push each other into the water. Some drown under the weight of their armor. Others are trampled by the mass behind them. The Roman legionaries arrive and begin to massacre the soldiers trapped on the bank. It is a massacre so brutal that the Cephisus River, according to later chronicles, flows red with blood for hours. The Pontic soldiers who manage to cross find no salvation. Other Roman units wait for them on the other side. Archelaus desperately tries to slow the pursuit, to organize a rearguard that allows the survivors to escape. He gathers a few thousand men who have not yet lost their heads. He tries to form a defensive line, but it is useless. The Roman legions advance in perfect formation, inexorable. Archelaus's line disintegrates after a few minutes of combat. The Pontic general, seeing that all is lost, flees with a small escort of cavalry. He gallops toward the coast, where the Pontic fleet awaits him. He is one of the few high-ranking commanders to survive. As the sun begins to set, the massacre continues. The Roman legionaries have turned the pursuit into a methodical manhunt. Teams of legionaries scour the battlefield, finishing off the enemy wounded, collecting weapons and armor. There is no disorganized looting. Sulla controls everything. The booty will be divided equally according to Roman military rules. When darkness finally stops the pursuit, Sulla orders the dead to be counted. The results are almost unbelievable. Of his army of 15,000 men, fewer than 2,000 are dead or seriously wounded. On the other side, the field is covered with Pontic corpses. The Roman counters stop counting when they reach 100,000. It is impossible to say exactly how many died. Perhaps 120,000, perhaps more. Of the army of 60,000 men that Archelaus brought to Chaeronea, fewer than 10,000 survived, and these 10,000 are scattered without weapons. without organization. They no longer represent a military threat. Sulla walks through the battlefield. While his men light bonfires, he observes the corpses piled in front of the Roman fortifications. He observes the destroyed chariots, the dead horses, the thousands of bodies that stretch to the horizon. He has turned a 4-to-1 numerical inferiority into one of the most crushing victories in Roman military history. The legionaries, exhausted but euphoric, acclaim him. They shout his name, Sulla. Sulla is the cry of men who know they have participated in something extraordinary. They know that this battle will be remembered for centuries. Sulla raises his hand for silence. When he speaks, his voice is calm, almost cold. He tells his men that they have done well, but that the war is not over. Mithridates is still alive. There are still Pontic armies to destroy. This is only the first victory, but inside himself, Sulla knows that he has done more than win a battle. He has shown that tactical genius and discipline can win against any number. He has shown that Roman legions, properly led, are invincible, and he has sent a message to Rome, to the city he left behind. A clear message: Lucius Cornelius Sulla is the greatest living general, and when he returns to Rome, no one will be able to stop him. The morning after Chaeronea, the plain is a nightmare landscape. 100,000 corpses decompose. Under the Greek sun, the smell is unbearable. The crows arrive by the thousands, darkening the sky. The Roman legionaries, organized in teams, continue the macabre work of stripping the dead. Armor, weapons, yavels. Everything is collected methodically. Sulla needs this booty. His legions have not received pay from Rome for months. Pontic gold is the only way to maintain the loyalty of his men, but the real value of the victory is not the material booty. It is the political message that resonates throughout the Greek world. In a single day, Sulla has shown that Pontus is not invincible. The Greek cities that had allied with Mithridates begin to rethink their choices. Ambassadors arrive at the Roman camp bringing offers of submission. Thebes, Orchomenus. Dozens of smaller cities open their gates to the Romans without fighting. Sulla accepts these submissions. But he does not forget, the cities that betrayed Rome will pay a price. Thebes is heavily fined. Its treasures are confiscated. The leaders who supported Mithridates are executed publicly. Sulla wants Greece to understand a fundamental lesson. There is no salvation in allying with the enemies of Rome. Thousands of kilometers away, in Pergamum, Mithridates the Sixth receives news of the defeat. 60,000 men annihilated. His best general forced to flee. The entire strategy of conquering Greece collapsed in a single day. The reaction of the king of Pontus is blind rage. He orders the execution of the messengers who bring the bad news. Then when the rage passes, fear arrives. If Sulla can destroy 60,000 men with 15,000 legionaries, what can he do with reinforcements from Rome? But Mithridates does not surrender. He is a survivor. A man who spent his childhood drinking small doses of poison to immunize himself against assassins. He orders Archelaus to gather a new army. He sends messengers to Armenia, to Scythia, anywhere he can find allies. He promises gold, territories, anything, just to gather enough forces to stop Sulla. Archelaus, who fled with the remains of the Pontic fleet, arrives in Macedonia. Here he begins the difficult work of rebuilding an army from scratch. Mercenaries arrive attracted by Mithridates' gold, contingents from Thrace, from Macedonia. Even some desperate Greeks enlist. In a few months, Archelaus manages to gather a new army, not as large as the one destroyed at Chaeronea, but still formidable. About 40,000 men. Sulla receives intelligence reports on these preparations. He knows that Archelaus will try again. He knows that the war is not over. But now he has an enormous psychological advantage. His legionaries have seen what they can do against superior numbers. They have total confidence in their commander, and the enemies are afraid. During the winter of 86 to 85, before Sulla consolidates control over central Greece, His legions march from one city to another, re-establishing Roman authority. It is not a gentle pacification. The cities that resist are brutally sacked. Sulla needs gold to pay the troops and has no scruples about how to obtain it. Greek temples are stripped of their treasures. Anciens statues, works of art, everything is melted or shipped to Rome. The Greeks begin to hate Sulla as much as they fear Mithridates. But hatred without military power is useless. The Roman legions control every road, every port. There is no choice but to submit. In spring, news arrives that Archelaus has gathered a new army and is marching south. Sulla summons his officers. The discussion is brief. Some suggest waiting for reinforcements from Rome. Sulla refuses. He has won once against superior numbers. He can do it again, and this time Archelaus knows what awaits him. Fear is a weapon that Sulla intends to exploit to the maximum. The two armies move toward a new clash. This time the battlefield will be Orchomenus, a city in Boeotia near a lake. Sulla once again chooses the terrain with care. The lake limits the enemy's maneuver options. The surrounding hills offer defensive positions. And once again, Sulla orders the construction of elaborate fortifications. The Battle of Orchomenus, fought in 85 before Christ, will be a repetition of Chaeronea, but even more brutal. Archelaus, obsessed with avenging the previous defeat, launches desperate frontal attacks against the Roman positions. His soldiers, many of whom are mercenaries without the discipline of the previous troops, shatter against the Roman lines like waves against rocks. At the end of 2 days of combat, another 15,000 Pontic soldiers lie dead. Archelaus flees again, this time with only a few hundred men. Pontus has lost 2 armies in less than a year. Mithridates' military threat in Greece is over. With Greece pacified, Sulla begins to look east. Mithridates still controls Asia Minor. But before marching against the heart of the Pontic Empire, Sulla receives news from Rome that changes everything. His political enemies have taken control of the city. They have declared him a public enemy. His properties have been confiscated. His supporters have been executed. Sulla must choose to continue the war against Mithridates or return to Rome to regain control of the city. The decision he makes will define not only his fate, but that of the entire Roman Republic. But before leaving, Sulla negotiates a peace treaty with Mithridates, a treaty that allows the king of Pontus to keep his kingdom in exchange for indemnities and the renunciation of all conquered territories. Some historians will criticize this decision. They say that Sulla left the destruction of Pontus unfinished, but Sulla is a realist. He knows that the real enemy is not in the east, it is in Rome. And he knows that he must return with his victorious legions before his rivals consolidate power. The consequences of Chaeronea go far beyond the military defeat of Pontus. That battle showed that a Roman general with the loyalty of the troops can challenge the Senate itself. It opened the way to civil war. It showed that the legions, loyal to the commander rather than to the state, are the ultimate instrument of political power. Chaeronea is not just a battle. It is the first step toward the end of the Roman Republic. Chaeronea is much more than a military victory. It is the definitive demonstration of a principle that will forever change the nature of Roman warfare. Discipline and tactical genius are worth more than numbers. That plain in Boeotia in 86, before Christ, became the laboratory where Sulla perfected a formula that Roman generals would use for centuries. The battle demonstrates the complete evolution of the Roman military system. The legions fighting at Chaeronea are no longer the citizen militias of the early centuries of Rome. They are professionals, men who have made war their career. They have uniform training, standardized equipment, and above all, a tactical cohesion that no other army of the ancient world possesses. When a Roman maniple advances, every man knows exactly what he must do. There are no improvisations. There are no individual heroics that break formation. There is only the brutal efficiency of the Roman military machine. Sulla understands this better than anyone. Chaeronea does not win because he is braver than Archelaus. He wins because he prepares the battlefield with maniacal care. Every trench, every sharpened stake, every hidden hole is positioned exactly where it must be. When the scythed chariots charge, they are not facing improvised legionaries. They are hitting a defensive system designed scientifically to destroy them. This is Sulla's true innovation. He does not invent new weapons. He does not discover new tactical formations. He simply brings Roman military organization to a level of perfection never seen before. He uses engineering as a weapon, turns the terrain itself into an ally, and above all understands that in ancient warfare, psychology counts as much as the sword. The Pontic soldiers who see their scythed chariots self-destruct do not lose only a weapon, they lose confidence. They see their best weapon, the one that was supposed to guarantee victory, turned into a deadly trap. When the Pontic infantry advances afterward, it advances without conviction. The men fight because they must, not because they believe they can win. And in the critical moment, when Sulla launches his fresh reserves, the Pontic line collapses not only physically, but psychologically. The massacre that follows is almost inevitable. A routed army is a dead army. The soldiers who flee cannot defend themselves, and the Roman legionaries, trained to pursue methodically, massacre them with industrial efficiency. 100,000 dead are not the result of 100,000 individual duels. They are the result of a superior military system that grinds an inferior army like grain under the millstone. But Chaeronea has consequences that go well beyond the battlefield. That victory changes the balance of power in the entire Eastern Mediterranean. Before Chaeronea, many believed that Rome was vulnerable. The massacre of 80,000 Romans ordered by Mithridates seemed to show that Roman power could be challenged. After Chaeronea, no one dares to think that anymore. Rome can be temporarily defeated. It can lose battles. But in the end, the Roman military machine crushes any resistance. The Eastern kings draw the lesson. Mithridates himself, after Chaeronea and Orchomenus, will never again challenge Rome in open field. He will continue to fight for another 20 years, but always with guerrilla warfare, poisonings, political intrigues, never again with massive armies in pitched battle. He has learned that against Roman legions commanded by a competent general, numbers are not enough. But the most important lesson of Chaeronea is the one that Sulla brings to Rome. He has shown that a general with the loyalty of the troops is more powerful than the Senate itself. The legionaries who fight at Chaeronea do not fight for Rome. They fight for Sulla. They owe him the victory, the booty, their lives. When Sulla marches on Rome in 83 before Christ, those same legions follow him without hesitation. This is the true legacy of Chaeronea, not the 100,000 Pontic victims, not the demonstration of Roman tactical superiority, but the proof that the legions, once an instrument of the Roman state, have become the instrument of the general who commands them. Sulla opens the way, Pompey will walk it, Caesar will bring it to its logical conclusion. And in the end, the Roman Republic will die not from external enemies, but because ambitious generals will use the legions to conquer power. There is a profound irony in this. Sulla wins at Chaeronea using discipline, organization, the submission of the individual to the system, but that same victory shows that a brilliant individual in command of the system can bend it to his own purposes. The legions that advance in perfect formation at Chaeronea will advance with the same perfection against the Roman Senate a few years later. Sulla's tactical genius at Chaeronea is based on principles that remain valid even today. First, know your enemy. He studies the scythed chariots, understands how they work, designs specific countermeasures. Second, use the terrain to your advantage. The choice of Chaeronea as battlefield is not random. Every element of the terrain is exploited. Third, prepare meticulously. The Roman fortifications require weeks of brutal work, but that work saves thousands of Roman lives. Fourth, maintain control. Throughout the battle, Sulla knows exactly where his troops are, what they are doing, when to launch the reserves. Fifth, leave nothing to chance. Every centurion knows what to do in every eventuality. These principles seem obvious today, but in the ancient world, where many battles were decided by disorganized charges and individual heroism, they represent a revolution. Sulla turns war from an art into a science, and that science will give Rome dominion over the known world. There is also a darker lesson in Chaeronea, the massacre of 100,000 men, many of whom were massacred while fleeing or surrendering. Shows the absolute brutality of ancient warfare. Sulla offers no quarter. He takes no prisoners until the enemy is completely destroyed. This is not chivalry. It is total annihilation. And Sulla uses the same ruthlessness against his political enemies when he returns to Rome. The proscriptions, the death lists, the mass executions that Sulla orders during his dictatorship are the political equivalent of Chaeronea, total elimination of the opposition. Today, more than 2,000 years later, Chaeronea remains one of the most studied battles in military history. Military academies analyze Sulla's fortifications. Historians debate the exact numbers of victims. Tacticians study how a small army can defeat a large one. But perhaps the most important lesson is the one concerning leadership. At Chaeronea, Sulla is not only a general, he is a leader who inspires absolute trust. His legionaries remain in formation, while 90 scythed chariots charge toward them because they believe that Sulla knows what he is doing. This trust does not come from nothing. It comes from years of victories, from months of visible preparation, from the certainty that their commander has a plan, and when the plan works, that trust turns into fanatical loyalty. This is the question that Chaeronea poses to anyone who studies leadership. How do you build the kind of trust that allows 15,000 men to face 60,000 enemies without panic? Sulla's answer is simple but profound. Absolute competence, meticulous preparation, and the willingness to share risks with one's men. Sulla does not command from afar. He is on the battlefield. Visible, vulnerable. His legionaries know that if they lose, he dies too. What decision of Sulla do you believe was the most brilliant? The choice of terrain, the design of the fortifications, and the timing in launching the reserves? Leave your comment and tell us what you think. And if this story fascinated you, I know that Chaeronea is only one of the incredible battles that forged Rome. In the next video, we will explore how another Roman general turned an apparent defeat into triumph. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you do not miss the stories of the Bruggets, the greatest commanders in history, because in the end, Chaeronea teaches us a timeless truth. When everyone says it is impossible, when logic suggests retreat, true leaders find a way to win.